and this is the I will ask you to join menti.com by scanning the QR code or by entering the code on your computer, and you will be able to answer questions and pose new questions as well to our panelists. We will be starting shortly, so hold on. Thank you.
To check.
I have overlap.
Because Kuhn mentioned that he wants to have a call with you.
Because that's my tomorrow.
Are you happy?
Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to session 2. Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to session 2. And for those that you joined us online right now, or we are opening the session 2 now. And for those that they went to, I hope that you already had your cup of coffee or tea and you're back with us. We will start the session shortly. And I must apologize to I must apologize for the technical issues for those who joined us online, and sorry for this. We hope that now the problem is no more existing, so you could be with us for the rest of the sessions. You do see also a QR code in front of you that you could actually use your phone, scan this QR code, and that will help you to join the Mentimeter, where you can interact with the event. And me and Kim here, we will be the voice of those who joined remotely to exchange with this conference. Just to make sure those people that joined us online, I hope that you can hear us. The room is filling up.
Welcome back. to this room if you're here. If you're in the back, come forward, come quickly. You can take a seat, else you have to be standing for 2.5 hours. So come, quickly take a seat. We even have some VIP seats left. Go get yourself a nice seat. For the people at home, we are so sorry we didn't get the sound working this morning. Probably we were hacked by Russians. That's a very good excuse in this context. So we hope now the sound should be working. We will give you a very, very quick recap of what happened this morning. We had our opening session where basically there were two conclusions. One, yes, there is a lot of legislation coming to us, but that is kind of unavoidable because the world around us is in turbulent places. So, and development on the technical level goes so fast, we can't afford not to have a lot of legislation. But the good news is, all the organizations involved are working really hard to find each other, understand each other, and tune to each other's needs. But the worrying thing is the world is not going to slow down soon. Standards are not going to get more time to be implemented. It will maybe only less. And at the same time, we have less and less experts available. So if we keep doing what we did, we might not be able to keep up the good work. So we might have to fundamentally rethink the way we work with standards and how we can make them work. That's basically the very short management summary of what we did this morning. For this session, if you're live in the room or if you are at home, we'd like you to participate with our online voting system. Therefore, we have my sidekicks, Nushin and Kim. How can people join in our online voting and question tool?
Please join us on menti.com. They have a QR code for you that you can scan on your mobile phone or join on your computer by entering the code visible on your screen. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. And also in the frame on the bottom of your screen, there's a QR code that also brings you to our voting system. What is one of the questions that is already asked? Can we see, is there one question that you have? No, oh, this is already the quiz. Oh, that's perfect. Is there a question from the audience in the Q&A? No, not yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so if you go to the bottom of on your phone to open Q&A, there you can ask a question. We cleaned all the questions from last session. We're going to start with a clean slate. You can ask a question by opening the Q&A. There you can also see the questions of all the other people who asked the question. If there is a question that you really like or think is really relevant, give it a thumbs up. The questions with the most upvotes will float to the top of their Q&A pile. And those questions we will ask to our panelists. I see a first question came in. What is it?
Yes, we have the first question available.
Will the red cybersecurity...
Oh. Hit the...
There we are.
There we are, yes.
Will the red cybersecurity requirements be replaced by CRA or will these two coexist? Sounds a very technical question, but definitely this is one of the questions we can definitely ask. For that, we're going to discuss with our very expert panel. Can I get a big round of applause for Camille Dornier, Kia, Francois, Paloma, and Sid? Find yourself a nice chair, and I see we have one microphone lacking, so we need one more microphone coming here, because we need the fifth one. And it's over there, it's on your table. Yeah, that's where the microphone is. Very good. Then, because François, we'd like to hear you as well. With me, I have Camille Dornier from the European Commission. You are one of the proposing bodies. It was already mentioned this morning in the opening session. There is an avalanche of legislation thrown at us from the Commission side. Isn't it too much? Shouldn't you slow down a little bit?
I'm not sure I feel, first, good morning everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here. First, I'm not sure I like the term avalanche, which is quite pejorative, I must say. And I think it's also good to remember why we are doing what we are doing, actually. So it's true that we had a lot of digital legislations being adopted during the past mandate. All the famous acts, also the AI acts, the Digital Market Acts in the cybersecurity field, the Cyber Resilience Act, obviously, which we are in the process of implementing, and many others. But here, I think it's also good to remember why we did this. It's because...
Yeah. Just continue, we'll fix it.
Does this work? Yeah. Because we saw that there was a need to have such legislation also to ensure an adequate level of cybersecurity in the EU, because I think we talk a lot about the impact on businesses of these cybersecurity requirements, and of course it's something that we need to take into account, but we also have to remember that in the first place, this cybersecurity legislation is meant to protect businesses and citizens.
Yeah,
because
we can't do without. And is this only...
also has a cost, yes.
And is this only the beginning of the avalanche, or have we seen most of it already?
So I think it's fair to say that we've seen already most of it. So, and as already mentioned in the previous panel, we are more now looking with the digital package that will come next year. We are looking really at the simplification aspects.
Yeah, but also I think technology is changing super fast. Global circumstances are changing super fast. This regulation probably isn't going to sustain the next 30 years.
I'm not sure. Yes, of course. I think already we have to look at emerging technologies. I think something that was also mentioned and that I quite like was the topic of quantum computers, for instance, and the fact that post-quantum cryptography is also something that we need to consider. We will need to see also if the standards, for instance, need to be adapted in the future to integrate these post-quantum cryptography elements. So that's for sure. I think we will be busy in the coming years, and we will also have to see how frequently, and also together with the standardization organizations, how frequently we need to update the standards to make sure that we are really covering all the threats, including the new ones.
So we might have seen the end of the avalanche, but more snow is coming. I won't say winter is coming, because that sounds too apocalyptic. Kieslav Jansen, you represent Denmark in the council, like the member states. From next summer on, you will be the president of the European Union for half a year, so you'll be also chairing all the meetings when the member states meet. When member states are meeting and talk about legislation, is standardizability a topic? Do you already think when you discuss legislation, ooh, can this be standardized, and can this be harmonized, and can this be aligned?
Well, I think that we always consider standards to be quite important. I think there is, in general, I should say, CRA, Cyber Resilience Act, is the first product legislation we've ever done in the cyber realm. And first time many of us encountered the new legislative framework and utilized that for cybersecurity, and also really looked at standards for products in that regard. But that was a big part of that negotiation as well. How do we standardize this in a way that's as simple as possible? How do we not overcomplicate it in general? So that was a consideration. I know that the time frame given by all the co-legislators for the standardization organs is not the biggest in developing standards, and we are aware of that, which I think is also why we are not currently now making new legislation, but we are really focusing on how is it being implemented and following up and ensuring that we maintain the tempo that we have set forth. So that is something we will continue to discuss also during the Danish presidency, to make sure that the standards are actually being developed so that we're ready to implement it. I think we're also, in general, member states at a level lower than the council, because we are very abstract. But there are also expert groups that are discussing how do we go about this in member states, how do we inform about the standards, how do we raise awareness, because I think it's one thing to have standards, but with a lot of this new legislation, you'll have entities, companies, businesses, organizations that have never had to do standards before, or maybe don't have experience with it. And standards is sort of their own language in of themselves. Like it's difficult to just get one and read it and know what to do.
Well, in a minute, we'll do the Standardization 101 quiz to make sure that everybody, even if you're completely new to this world, you feel there's a warm bath of welcome and not just abbreviation numbers and join committees with a number that even I don't understand. Francois Zamora, you're from Orange. You're an industry leader, but also you're from AFNOR. That is the French. Oh, I think you switched off your microphone. Yeah, just it's working, and then don't touch it.
Yeah, AFNOR is the French national standardization body.
Yeah. The way we do standards now, legislation coming fast, tight deadlines, so many stakeholders that we should have included, and then there are tight deadlines. And industry profit margins are slim, so you can't just afford sending a ton of experts to all these meetings all the time.
Yeah, this is why we are looking for an efficiency. Efficiency for evidence gathering. And what we do, and I will share a little the secret, we use extensively international standards and European standards as the baseline, as the pivot of evidence gathering to be compliant to all the text for which we are eligible to. And we are eligible on NIS2, CRA, DORA, CER, so business continuity, resilience, cybersecurity, and all of that are object of a continuous improvement process, which is called a management system in standards vocabulary. And they are international standards from Subcommittee 27, or even in the area of JTC 13 from CENELEC. Oh. And organizing your information according to the standard and organizing your project and your activity to continuously improve cybersecurity and resilience is the key pivot to reuse a given single evidence upon these multiple standards. And the way we are considering the text coming from the European Commission is always on two parameters. The first one is a scope. The text refers to a scope, and the text refers to a security control. So once you have that reading key, you're able to say what is overlapping or what is complementary. And when you organize that according to the suggestions from the international standards, then you're a winner, because you do the work once, but you tailor the report according to the format requested by the regulation.
Okay, so there is a lot we can do in this field. Sid Holman, you're from Digital Europe. You're the industry representing the receiving end of all of this. What do we mean with the receiving end?
Well, I mean, we've seen 40 digital laws, or almost 40 digital laws, being adopted in the past 5 years. So you can imagine that for companies, there's a lot coming at them, especially if many of these relate to cybersecurity. I'm sure that there are a couple of compliance officers out there having some restless evenings. But, you know, that is if you see the industry as being the receiving end. However, I think we've all heard of the Draghi report by now. Draghi, and we've been saying this for a lot longer than he has, by the way, but he acknowledges that the EU is lagging behind other regions in the world. So for instance, the EU lags behind the US a full 30% in GDP growth. And what he says basically is, well, there are a lot of angles to this, of course, but surely one of these is that Europe has a lot of rules. Simply put, and it doesn't mean that rules are bad. They are there with reason. But if you have that many legislations in the last few years, maybe we could look at some inconsistencies between them, or at least make sure that there is a coherent framework. So the receiving end could also be taken a bit broader than that.
Yeah. Paloma Lancesa, you're from Certisar. Just to give a little insight in how complex things can get. We're going to dive a little bit in what you're working on. We don't need to fully understand, we just need to understand how complex it is. You're doing the industry mapping between EIDAS and DORA legislations. Yeah. What are we talking about?
A NIS2 directive, and I think also critical infrastructures and so many things. So I would say this is very complicated indeed. I mean, cybersecurity protect and prevent cyber attacks. And cyber attacks are always 99% international. So you are trying to protect a territory against attacks coming from all around the world. So this is the complexity of the situation. So I'm a lawyer myself for the last, okay, I don't say it. But I tell you, in a way, the legal system is a little bit broken, because of these transnational attacks, transnational companies, transnational situation, big companies providing services all around the world. So the current situation is that government relies on the official journey. They think if they publish something, it must be applied. Okay, yes, it's the classical way to proceed. But the reality is that the reality is far more complex. So a standardization could amend some of the problems provided by the legislation. We can harmonize somehow all these different requirements coming from different legislation at the same time. And my company, we evaluate companies and when they get evaluated, they can provide services throughout the European Union without any further requirements. So that would be more or less the idea, to find a way that you comply once, you implement once, and then you can provide services all around the world. And that's the time of complexity we try to fix through standardization and through evaluation.
Okay, so complexity is the complexity only doesn't make standardization more complex, but also good standardization makes complexity more simple. That's a good way to hear. Soon we will talk about. I want to talk with you about how we see the interaction, interplay, and potential overlap and even collision between this legislation. How we can deal with it, how we can make it more simple, and how we can ensure proper coordination. But first, I can imagine we have so many viewers this year that may be new to the world. As one of you said, more and more people have to deal with standards because it's getting broader. So we thought we're going to bring people up to speed with a very short quiz about what do you know about cybersecurity. If you're new to it, this is your way to learn what we're talking about. If you think you're the expert, make sure you win the quiz. The faster you answer the questions, the more points you can earn. And if you win it, you will win your own standard. You will be asked to get a nickname. I think you're all avid gamers, so use your gaming nickname. I will not disclose what my gaming nickname is because I chose it when I was 12. It's very embarrassing. I still use it. So take your time, get yourself a nice nickname, and then we can see who does it. And we give you some questions. There will be 4 options. If you get the correct answer, you get 1,000 points. But every millisecond that you wait for it, points will be deducted from your score. Hit it. Let's start the first question. And the first question is, do you know what are the European Standardization Organisations? So what are the European standard organizations that provide European standards? Is it ENISA, ETSI, CENELEC? Is it CENELEC and ETSI? Is it ENISA, ISO, and IEC? Or is it ISO, IEC, and E2? So ENISA, ETSI, CENELEC, CENELEC, and ETSI, ENISA. Ooh. Well, most people know this. It's CENELEC, and ETSI. It's not ENISA. Who would like to explain why it's not? Because quite some people think ENISA, who's also co-organizing this conference, is doing it. Francois, why isn't ENISA not setting? Kia, you want to say it?
Well, because ENISA is a cyber agency for the EU that has a mandate that's described in the Cybersecurity Act, and developing standards is not part of that. ENISA has worked within standards regarding having an overview and using them to develop their own certifications, of course, and they do develop their own certifications, but they do not develop standards.
Okay, very good. Let's see who was the fastest in this one. Can we go to the next one and see the scoreboard? Can we go to the next slide?
And also perhaps as a complement regarding the 3 European Standardisation Organisations, they are named in the standardization regulation.
Yeah,
so this is where you find them also from the legal point of view.
Yeah, also you and I can go sit in a pub and design a nice standard. It's not the official one because we're not recognized by the legislation. Okay, Alexander, but very closely for an Agent X9, we have a tie. And it's really fun that Agent X9 also has an agent avatar. That's pure coincidence. Let's go to the next question. Yeah. Question 27. Yes. Press, and you can start enter. Oh, we have 200 players in the room. Oh, even more, and it's growing quickly. Hit it. Start the... So answer fast again. What are the international standard organizations recognized by the EU or providers of international standards? So now we look global. What is this? ISO, IEC, GSMA, 3GPP, IEEE, I2, ISO, or ISO, IEC, I2, 3GPP, ISO, IEC, and IEE. Ooh, a lot of people know this. It's ISO, IEC, and I2. Francois, we see a lot of these names, 3GPP, GSMA, they all work. Why is ISO, IEC, and I2, why are they the only three?
Yes, because these are the acknowledged international institutions that have a mandate from, in particular, UN for IT, that give them the statute of international standardization organizations.
In how many cases are the international standards copy-pasted and made EU standards? Is it in most cases or only very rare?
There is a convention between, which is the convention from 1991 from Vienna, that allows ISO to give to CENELEC the content of the international standards. And so thanks to that convention, it's possible to inherit from international level works.
So we don't have
I
to
have absolutely no idea how many standards are object of that kind of adoption, but that's for sure. You need to be an international institution acknowledged at that.
I read somewhere it's about 75%. Paloma, some NGOs are worrying, and the European legislation has much more safeguards for consumers, environment, to be included in the process. On the international level, that is not always ensured. Are international standards, if we copy-paste them to the EU reality, are they taken into all the interests, or should we have much more EU standards for the way we want to do it?
Well, for IP reasons, you cannot copy-paste, so that's the first question. So you take an ISO standard, for example, 27001, then you translate it in different languages, and then you produce a European norm, and then it becomes, in a way, compulsory under some voluntary basis. So we don't copy-paste, we get, in a way, inspired by what they do, but the reality is, for example, in cybersecurity, the two big areas of a bunch of standards. There are 27,000 family and common criteria family that are typical for ISO. We get inspired by them when we produce, and we reference them in the European
It's inspiring, but not a blind copy-pasting.
We cannot copy-paste. Forget
ensuring.
about it.
Okay, let's go to the next question.
And I want to say something. All these standards are not for free, except ESI. ETSI standards. So you have to pay for the standardization. That's a question I put on the table of the Commission.
Okay, that's a sensitive topic. Yeah, we might go back to it. Let's first go back to our next question. And what is a harmonized standard? We talk a lot about harmonized standards. What are we talking with a harmonized standard? Is it when it's agreed by all the European Standardisation Organisations and they are in harmony? It's a standard that harmonizes different legislation in all the EU member states. Is it a standard developed on the request of the European Commission to ensure legal compliance? Or it's a standard that is published simultaneously by ISO, IEC, and CENELEC? Ooh, also most people know the correct answer. Camille, yeah, you can request one of the three official standardization organizations. Give me a standard.
Yes. Well, actually, yeah, pretty much. So it's really the specificity of the harmonized standards that they are answering a request from the European Commission to support the implementation of a legislation. So just to give a few examples, in the digital sphere, we have obviously the Cyber Resilience Act, where we issued a standardization request at the beginning of this year. We had also the request for the standard supporting the AI Act. So this is really about asking the European Standardization Organizations to develop these standards that will support this legislation. And one additional specificity, which I think is very important for the market, is the fact that these harmonized standards can grant a presumption of conformity. So if the standards are cited in the official journal of the EU, and if a manufacturer applies them, then the manufacturer can benefit from the presumption of conformity so presumed compliant with the legislation, in other words.
You shouldn't give away too much for the next question.
Which obviously is, oh, okay, right, I'm sorry for this, which is, of course, a very important aspect.
Yes. Okay, so industry can sit voluntarily together and say, shall we make this a standard so it's easier for us to do trade or have our interoperability between our products? But a harmonized standard is a standard that is requested by the Europeans to ensure legal. If you adhere to the standard, you're probably, you're most likely to be compliant. Yeah. Okay, can we go to the next question? This might be related to this one. Also again, first we get this one. How is ETSI different from CEN and CENELEC? In ETSI work on consensus and CENELEC just on majority voting. ETSI involves the industry directly, whereas CEN and CENELEC only has the national bodies as members. The standards need approval from CEN, CENELEC, so ETSI makes them and CEN, CENELEC has to approve them, or they cannot be requested by the EC. Yeah, it involves the industry directly sit. So in ETSI, you are directly at the table, but how does it work in CEN, CENELEC?
Well, in CEN, CENELEC, it goes through national standardization bodies. And of course, we as Digital Europe, we're not directly involved there. It's many of our members that are in there. Yeah, so basically that way. That's
yeah. Is that a in reality or in practice? What is the difference that you feel or for the outcome?
Well, again, I'm not a standardizer myself, so I'm not in these meetings. Maybe Francois has more of an insight there. But in general, we always think it's good if if standards are very much industry-driven and therefore consensus-based, and in what kind of way this happens is of secondary importance. But we support both.
Okay.
As an ETSI member, I would say we are quicker than any other standardization body, and either the members or through a mandate of the Commission, we pay. I mean, we pay the standards, so that's why they are for free. So we can reach the community earlier, and anyone can use them.
Okay, next year instead of a quiz, we're going to do a battle. That's very clear.
Also, just to add, because I think there were some developments in the past couple of years that are important to mention, including the fact that the standardization regulation was amended to establish that the national standardization organizations need to be in the driving seat for the implementation of the standardization requests. So in this respect, even if the processes between CEN, CENELEC and ETSI remain very different, there is also perhaps now this convergence where you need to have the national standardization organizations really making the decisions when it comes to the implementation of standardization requests.
Okay, so this national standardization bodies, that is where on the national level, industry and NGOs and regulators meet together, are in the driving seat more and more. Okay, let's go to the next question. And this question is, are European standards obligatory to follow in the EU or not? You can answer yes, yes, but only when they are harmonized. No, they're just suggestions, or no, but following helps in demonstrating compliance. And we have 5 more seconds to answer, so you have to be very quick, else you get 0 points. Most people seem to know, no, they're not, but already you said a little bit, if you conform to the standards, it's very easy to show, I have the standards, so I can comply. You can also choose to say, I don't follow the standard, but then you may be challenged and you have to show and demonstrate that you're compliant to legislation. Yeah, it can be. Oh, now you make.
They could be compulsory when they are referenced in a regulation or in an implementing act. So standardization become part of the legislation.
Okay, so in some cases.
Yeah, I think what Paloma refers to is actually, these are very marginal cases, because in the vast majority of cases, standards as a general rules are always voluntary. So yeah, even harmonized standards, you can choose not to follow them. It might be more difficult to demonstrate compliance, but this is still a choice.
Yeah, I once mentioned the compulsory use of USB-C ports on device, and everyone was like, that is an exception to the rule. That is a very special situation. Yeah. Let's move to our next question. How long does it take to develop a European standard from the initial request? So you, the EC, you ask, can you make a standard? How many months, this is in months, from 0 to 48 months you can choose. 48 months, of course, is 4 years. So how long does it take from the request from the European Commission until, on average, a standard has been discussed, debated, agreed, and yeah, this is in months. Yeah, so 0 to 48 months. We see we see answers from 2 to 48 coming in. Show us the correct answer. Oh, I think you had to press enter. You had to go back. Oh, go to the previous slide and one further, and now enter. The correct answer is between 27 and 32 months, more or less. Is that? Can that be shortened?
It matches in ISO IEC SC27 for cybersecurity. The average is 33 months.
33 months.
Yeah,
why
at international level. Yeah.
Why does it take so long, and could it be much shorter?
There is a phase where you have first experts, and then you have countries that that express their comments, and you have a lot of consultation and meetings to solve the comments.
Whose interests will be most violated or not taken into concern if he would do this in half the time? What is the big risk if he would put more pressure on it?
There is just the benefit of having a consensus earlier. However, that's the strength of the standards. It is made by consensus among an variety of countries, and when the standard is issued, that means that you are already in known field because the standard is already approved. So that's part of the benefit.
Kia, do you sometimes think, you can also do this in like half a year?
I think you can put pressure. I mean, I think sometimes consensus is already reached, but you find some, some difficulties that could be overcome. I mean, you can produce a good standard if you are taking good practices from the industry organization, et cetera, in less than a year. But if you want to become an European norm, you need to pass through a public review, and those that take a lot of time.
Take a lot of time. Kia?
Yeah, I mean, I think we would all be interested in faster standards, but the entire purpose of standards is also that we have consensus behind them. That's what makes them a strong tool, so that we don't have, I think from our side, as a small country, with less resources in some ways, and we are very highly digitized, so we do have resources here, it's also difficult to find the resources and the experts to join this. So I think if we do it faster, then the countries or the industries or the organizations with more resources can become a much louder.
Yeah, so for equality, we sometimes need to take some time.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to move to the next question, because else we don't have enough time for discussion. We have 2 more questions to go. Someone says fast track is possible. The question here we have is, who is coordinating in most cases European standardization? Because there's so much going on. I hear also someone says making it too fast disadvantages people with lesser resources. So that's a good notice, especially for equality times. You sometimes need to take some time. Okay, 2 more seconds to answer. Oh yeah, who is coordinating this? Yeah, most people think it's the 3 ASOs together, but the correct answer is the European Commission. How does that work?
I think it actually depends. For instance, in the case of indeed of harmonized standards, as mentioned previously, the Commission has to check at the end of the process that the outcome is indeed compliant with the standardization request and with the legislation that the standards are meant to support. However, in the cases of non-harmonized standards, I think it's really up to the standardizers themselves to do whatever they see as fit. And I think that even in the case of harmonized standards, of course, CENELEC and ETSI have a major role to play. They are the ones really doing the work, conducting the work, seeing how they will collaborate together as well. For instance, if it's a request which is sent to the 3 ASOs, they are really in charge of implementing the standardization request.
Okay, wonderful. Let's go to our last question. We see a big change in the field of players because a lot of people had this question wrong. Oh, well, we go to the last question. Let's see who we have ready. What is the role of ENISA in standardization? Oh, there's a typo in it. ENISA and standards. ENISA requests standards. ENISA occasionally develops standards. ENISA audits standards, or ENISA facilitates the establishment and the take-up of standards. So what is the role of ENISA in this? They request, they develop, they audit. Well, most people know this, they facilitate, and I think you already explained a little bit in the beginning. They are facilitating the establishment and the take-up of standards. Okay, this is hopefully a little introduction for the people who weren't too close into the world of standardization. Let's also see who is our standardization expert in the room. GP earned some points, Dominic as well. Alexander is also still doing good, so let's see. GP, is GP in the room? Or at home? GP, make yourself known. No, apparently you're not in the room, then you're probably one of the people at home. Take a screenshot of your device that we know that you're there. Send an email to our sidekicks or to us. If you can win this quiz, you probably can find our email addresses, and we'll make sure the goodie bag comes your way. We might still have some more really technical terms that we sometimes have to explain a little bit what they are meaning. When we first talk about this avalanche of, or spaghetti as you call it, of legislation, the big question that's always asked, will the red cybersecurity requirements be replaced by the CRA, or will this to exist? First of all, who can quickly explain what is the red cybersecurity requirement and what is the CRA? Yeah, Kia?
Well, the red cybersecurity requirements is the radio directive delegated act. So it's a delegated act that comes from a different legislation, wherein there are cybersecurity requirements for radio equipment. But the answer to this is that yes, those cybersecurity requirements will be replaced by cyber resilience, by the Cyber Resilience Act once that steps into force, and also that the standards developed for the red delegated act will also be transferred into the standards for Cyber Resilience Act. So there is we are considering, or Commission has also been considering, how exactly to transfer this over so that there will be no duplication, so that you won't have to come in and have to develop or follow new standards if you're already covered by the red cybersecurity requirements.
And will the CRA add new things to it, or do some of the standards have to be adjusted or adapted?
I don't think so. The Cyber Resilience Act has quite a number of different requirements. So the red, as I understand it, and please stop me if I'm wrong, the red it's only about when you are developing your product. But the Cyber Resilience Act has requirements regarding to vulnerability management and also reporting of vulnerabilities in cyber incidents that are not part of the red. So there are other requirements in CRA that go beyond that, but that shouldn't change which standard you're following in the process of developing your product, the sort of security by design. Those should be quite one-on-one.
Okay, so you don't have to change things, they will remain the same, but new things will be added. It's a much wider scope that you also have to think about.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Actually, so the coverage of the CRA is broader, and so the timeline is different in the sense that the Radio Equipment Directive Delegated Act will start applying this year in August. While for the CRA, we are talking about 11th of December 2027, and we will make sure that the two will not apply at the same time, so that manufacturers do not have to comply with both legislations.
Yeah. What's the next question we have coming?
We have the next question on the screen.
Yeah, okay. Can you tell it for those not able to read it?
The question is, how can small companies keep track of all the new requirements and regulations?
I mean, I think member states will also have to take some responsibility for this. We have a lot of SMEs in Europe, like a lot, compared also to America and other countries mentioned in the Draghi report, for instance. And we do have to raise awareness about this, which is quite challenging, I have to say. Also, because I know in Denmark when we were negotiating the Cyber Resilience Act, we really tried to get input from also our SME communities, but they do not have the resources to really read and understand legislation. They're not lawyers, they are inventors or people who are technically gifted but not reading legislation. So there's a big act of also translating this sort of what does this legislation mean for you, and we're trying to do that in Denmark. We have a website where we sort of gather all things cyber related. We try to come out and talk at conferences and also to engage with the business organizations for SMEs as well. So we're trying to do that. I think we're also at the EU level, if I remember correctly, there are some grants for SMEs from the Digital Europe program where they can also ask for or apply for funds in order to live up to these requirements and regulations. So we're all trying to do this, but I'm not going to sit here and say that that's not difficult. It is challenging, and it will feel like an administrative burden. We're trying to do that as simple as we can, also in collaboration with ENISA as well, who as the European Cyber Agency will also be raising awareness on this. So I think we're all trying to do this. It's just difficult, and I don't think we're going to come through that by trying to pretend that it isn't.
Someone here also already commented standards really help small companies as well because your interoperability, it's easier to adapt to the market. Sid, what advice would you give to small, medium enterprises, especially if you're not lawyers reading the official European journals every day? How do you keep track?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I think it's very important to realize that, you know, for big companies already, it's quite something. I mentioned the almost 40 new digital laws to deal with them and to, you know, keep track of what's coming your way. Well, I mean, it's no surprise that this is way more difficult if you are a small company and you don't have a legal and compliance department. So also within Digital Europe, we represent companies from all different sizes, including SMEs. European SMEs, and we hear the same concerns out of that angle. I think in general, it's you know, I'm also happy that the colleague from Denmark underlined you know, certain initiatives on European level in terms of funding or in terms of awareness raising that are ongoing, and this definitely should be something that we do more. We try to play our part as well. We try to relay whatever happens at European level to them. But again, this is not always easy. So yeah, we are very much open to discuss also how we can do this better and more. Yeah. Make sure that also they are ready for it.
Let's do one more. Do we have sidekicks? Do you have another question, Lucien and Kim? Yeah. You have what is the next question?
Yes, we have a new question about the interplay between different legislation.
Yeah, so the problem of interplay is known. Please discuss about the solution for the industry, or for instance, which tool to use to comply with all the rules via one test for a product covered by all the existing EU rules. Ooh, the one side.
This is complexity again.
Yeah.
And this is complexity again. I would like to say yes, but this is absolutely impossible.
But in how many cases does the one standard or regulation says your product has to be a square, and then the other regulation or demand is that it has to be a circle at the same time? Do we have a lot of these cases?
The question is, I mean, all these regulations are designed for big companies. For companies with implementing capability, governing capability, etc. So the small companies are very much under the radar. They have problems to implement them, not only to track them, but to implement them, evaluate them, etc., etc. So when you are thinking about this kind of simple solution, would be very helpful for small companies to find a way to find a kind of small regulation or to, in a way, to establish different level of compliance or complexity for the different type of organization involved. But the reality is now you cannot do that because every company, each company is completely different from other company. So you need a risk assessment always, and depending on your risk assessment, you implement different controls. So this differ from one company to another. Even we've been trying to benchmark different companies in the same sector, to rate them, to say you have a 9/10 on cybersecurity, and we haven't succeeded. So hopefully we could do so, but I don't see it very close.
Yeah.
Oh, just to react on this, I actually don't think that the legislation is designed specifically for big companies. Like, by contrast, I think that we're really including a lot of provisions specifically to exempt small and micro enterprises. There are specific provisions in the AI Act, but also in the CRA. We are also have this concept of sandboxes where SMEs could also test their compliance with the rules. And we also have a dedicated part where we are planning on producing guidance documents with a specific objective of facilitating compliance for small and micro enterprises. So, for instance, guidance on remote data processing solutions, guidance on the scope of the legislation, and also, as mentioned previously, there are some funding programs under Digital Europe, which are also to help small and micro enterprises comply with the legislation, including the CRA.
Okay. Well, can we ask the next question to our audience? Is also a question to you. When you look at all this legislation that is coming, so can we close the Q&A and go to the next question? Or I think it's the next slide. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah, so if you look at all this legislation coming, what do you mostly see? You can see overlaps, that's all overlapping each other. Gaps, there's still so much that we're missing. Conflicts, the one requires you to be a square, the other one requires you to be a circle at the same time. You see perfect harmony, they all really align. Or you said, I completely lost oversight, I have no clue what is happening anymore, or I'm missing this. The first answers are coming in. Yeah, we see oversight is the most answered thing so far. But we also see a lot of overlaps. Let's see who in the audience, who sees some overlap somewhere that you're concerned about. Who has a concern about the interplay between all this legislation coming where you see an overlap or a gap? Hello. Oh. Can we have the catch box? Yeah, it's going to work.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is
And
Grace.
you have to keep it really close. Yeah.
Really close. Okay. My name is Grace Carter. I work for Elastic. We are a B2B open source Dutch company, search AI platform. My question is, we're also getting our heads around all of the legislation coming and also looking at how standardization can be a big process in helping us comply with that. And I think, it is important that we identify gaps and identify overlaps. I think that's a really important question in this process. But my question to you actually would be, how can we as industry be useful to you in, first of all, the simplification process of all of the legislation that's going on? Are there best practices that you've seen from industry already? What's useful? Also from Digital Europe's perspective, what have you found has been effective when trying to engage with policymakers here in Brussels and also in the national capitals? And then secondly, also in the standardization process itself, how can industry be helpful to the standardization bodies in shaping these standards so we are more efficient and we get to our shared version of success?
That's very good. Let's start with the first one. Sid, what can industry, how can they be helpful?
Well, I mean, that would also be my question to the Commission, of course, and to other institutions. But to the lady in the audience, of course, maybe we can figure something out. We have a reduced membership fee for startups to begin with, so that could be a first step. But jokes aside, I think in general, we with our membership are currently in discussions. When we talk about Interplay, we do hear many concerns, specifically on overlaps. Also, some companies that have lost oversight, but we're trying to work on that. And these overlaps are, we have a couple of ideas, but most of them we're still fleshing out. And this is also where, I'm very much looking forward to the discussion we'll have later this year on the regulatory simplification digital package that is in the Commission work plan. So yeah, I'm bouncing the question off to my colleagues here.
Yeah, and I think it's very nice.
I think companies, industry, are simply essential. I mean, absolutely in standardization. In fact, I mean, we cannot standardize inventing something from nothing. Absolutely, yes.
Camilla, what do you expect from?
And thank you for this comment. Like, I think it's an excellent point. So the first thing is that, especially as an open source stakeholder, but actually any relevant stakeholder, I can only encourage you to join the standardization work, for instance, for the CRA, where you can really make an impact there, share your views, what is, also what is workable for you or not. So I think this would be my first point. And you have indeed in this room a lot of people that can guide you on how to join this work. And please don't hesitate to come to me as well, of course. And as a second point, regarding the simplification agenda of the Commission, so indeed, we will have this digital package by the end of the year, Q4 2025. And there we envisage a few things. We envisage, for instance, a revision of the Cybersecurity Act, and also we would like to gather feedback on the simplification aspects, because this is also something that we want to introduce. For instance, if you see that there are some inconsistencies, some overlaps or gaps that are not already being addressed, then we really welcome feedback from the stakeholders, and that's also something that we can introduce also in the digital package.
Okay. Well, this totally wasn't a setup, but I'm very happy that you asked this question. We're also going to make this a question to the other people in the audience and people at home. If you could give one piece of advice to the European Commission to how they can make legislation in a way that it is helping you, that it can enable the development of standards, that it's helping the industry or users, consumers, or industry, whatever you are, to do it in such a way that it enables proper standardization making in a way that works, how you can do that, and see, of course, the first one coming, involve industry from the beginning. Kia?
I think everything was been said. I agree with. I think it's also really important to be able to speak each other's languages, because I feel like that is a really huge thing. I remember when we discussed the Cyber Resilience Act, and I also met with with the open source community who wanted to make suggestions for how we could change the legislation, and some of the suggestions were just not legally possible, because again, the people who are developing these things are not lawyers or they are technical experts within their field, and they can say what they want. I think there is a bridging there that has to occur, because EU legislation is a very particular language, and it's difficult to speak. And I think one of the ways that industry can do that is also, instead of just of trying to do it in a way that doesn't penetrate, is to come up with really specific examples to say, like, why would this be a problem for us? To really explain that, so that because we also, I'm also not a practitioner anymore, so we don't all have that understanding of how this actually looks like from the industry perspective. So to also, and I mean this, it's like, if you as a part of the industry do not have a big business organization or can't partake in that, really having concrete examples and clarifying what your position is really does help, because we also don't know exactly what you experience either. And I think that's something we sometimes forget when we discuss these things.
Yeah. Who has some piece of it? See if I can get it to you. Oh, almost. Well, at least now you're paying attention. That's very good. Yeah. But you have to keep it very close.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, citizens and colleagues. My name is Angelos Harlaftis, Epaphos Advisors. I represent two things. One, I represent the group Urania and Helios Space and Defense Group, which is working on the creation of the European Defense Community according to the Treaty of 1954, a different entity from the European Union. And the second, I represent the Open Codex Group, which is outside of the environment of the Linux Foundation. So we believe that in the current times, we have to keep the standards as we are putting them, because they are an obstacle against the American companies, because we cannot compete. We all know this. So we have to keep the standards, maybe, and the legislation. Maybe we can simplify a little bit. But on the other hand, our groups, they believe that we have to give another direction to the open source communities, which they don't have. They don't need a lot of standards. we can be more free there. And it's according to our also ideology as Europeans, if we want to be outside of the American concurrency and colonization.
Okay, that's a very good. We're going to go more into in the third session. We'll talk more about the different approaches to standardization, also from the open source community, how it's different from maybe other organizations. But it's a good note. We can complain about standards and legislation that it's all a burden, but if we don't do it, we also might throw away what we value in Europe. That's a very nice comment. Oh, I'm not in good shape today.
Yeah, I think for me, like, it's two main pieces of advice. One is focus on the big picture, like make sure, like, maybe use like something like an onion model for the vendor standards, where the big standards bodies focus on the big issues and avoid some of the bike shedding, and some of the smaller issues leave a bit of room there. I know that's uncomfortable, but it's fine, trust me. And the second thing would be to make we are in new territory. Maintainers won't always be the spaces, the sense spaces aren't as accessible to many maintainers. So we also need to support their first bringing them to those rooms, and also maybe this class of mediators between the maintainer community and the standards bodies who understand both worlds, those bridge people. We need to find these people and support them and make sure that, because those are the people I think who make these processes smoother.
We can learn to speak each other's language, but also we might have some special interlocutors who can translate between the two worlds and convey messages from one to another. Dear sidekicks, you might have to scroll down a little bit on the screen. What are some suggestions coming in from the audience? Kim, what is one specifically that you think is interesting to mention here?
I think plenty of the messages is to involve the industry as soon as possible and be clear about the requirements. What do we need?
Okay. Well, let's AI help. If you press spacebar, AI is going to help us to group it into.
Yeah, we tried it.
Is it? Does it work? If you, Kim, if you press spacebar, does it group?
No, doesn't work.
It doesn't. Okay, AI doesn't work. We have to keep it the human way then today. Camille, is this some advice you can work with?
Yes, I mean, of course, when it comes to the, I mean, I'm not sure exactly to what part of the processes involve industry ASAP. It applies, I guess, to, well, everything. But I can just say here that for every proposal that we make, we do it in line with, sorry for the terminology, but what we call the better regulation principle, which means that we will always consult the stakeholders already at an early stage. So there is a feedback period and also a public consultation on the proposal. So there is also an opportunity for the industry to get involved, obviously, and to provide feedback. And also involve industry ASAP. I want to say yes, and I would also even answer like get involved ASAP in the standardization work. And then the earlier the better, because you can already start following the development of the standards from the very early start, and that's I think that's the best for everybody.
And if you spend some time involving them in an early stage, that's time you're going to win back in a later stage, or just going to take more time?
Could I jump in just to put an example of something that is already working on that direction? Is the EIDAS regulation. The EIDAS regulation was, I mean, the Commission, Council, and the Parliament were drafting the regulation at the same time. We were working on implementing use cases at the same time. The Commission was paying for large-scale pilots where we play around those implementing acts, and at the same time, a group of experts called AF was standardizing the solutions. So this is a cycle that everything, the legislation was being fit with all the experience at the same time. So I think it's a very good example of how to regulate on reality based on the industry and to standardize at the same time and to see whether the solution you are providing are working or not.
So instead of a very linear thinking, first do this, then do this, then do this.
We're working in parallel. We are working in parallel and feeding each other experiences. So I think it's a very good example.
Yeah. Kia?
No, I think, yeah, this is a good example. I think there are several levels to this. Like when we talk about standards, of course, because that's technical, involve industry. But when we talk about legislation, we should also not lose sight of the fact that that is political. Like we are doing legislation because we have political requirements that we push forward, and sometimes industry doesn't like those things either. I think it's important to involve stakeholders throughout. We also, in the Danish internal process, have quite a lot on that. But I think we should never think that when we involve, the more stakeholders you involve early in the process for legislation, it will take longer time. It just will, because the more cooks you have, the longer it takes. And that's also good. Sometimes we need that to develop things that are good. I saw one that said the CRA, we didn't get it 100% right. I don't think we've ever had a legislation where we got anything 100% right the first time around. I don't think that's possible. We develop these. That's also why we revise legislation, where we take in input. But I think it is, because legislation, especially for cybersecurity, there is a need for those. We're not doing those because we want to add burdens to industry. We're doing that because, and I think it's becoming clearer and clearer, we're facing a very different geopolitical situation where we need more cybersecurity, and we need it not just among the sort of more usual military domain. We need it for our critical infrastructure. We need it for the products that go into this entire supply chain. So it's just, I think we want, of course, to involve everybody, but there will always have to be a balance between what is the political need that we're fulfilling with this legislation and the time that we have to do this, and at the same time involving everyone. And we will never find that perfect golden
where everybody
road.
is heard and everybody. Is there one specific advice that you would like to highlight before we go to the next question? I see our sidekicks being very puzzled. Is there a specific one you'd like to highlight before we move on to the next question?
There is a few questions about guidance on how to...
What do you mean with that?
Let's see this one.
Develop standards or at least guidance and set into force at the same time as legislation, not months or years later. Yeah. Okay, let's move to it's already been mentioned a few times, simplification. Everybody likes the process and the outcome to be much more simpler. But on the other hand, there are a lot of stakeholders who all have their own specific desires, wishes. There are consumers, there's the environment, there's the legislators, and there's a different requirement for a washing machine than for a missile launcher, at least I hope. Can we also go to the next question in the voting system? That is, what would be the main principle to keep standardization simple? How can we keep it simple, François?
So first of all, I'd like to mention a fantastic work that CENELEC JTC13 made in WJ8 and WJ9 with regards to standardization on the RED and the CRA. You need to understand that these thousands of comments to be processed in a very, very short time. So fantastic work from the chair of these two work groups. And also to keep standardization simple, we need to keep the stakeholders together, understanding each other, and working as to go fast in the consensus. So that's for sure. Standardization simple is also the way you are going to evaluate the requirements on standardization. So there is a key milestone to get there is how simple or how efficient you are going to evaluate a given requirement. So the evaluation methodology is extremely important within the standardization ecosystem. And the skills of the evaluators themselves are going to be also very important to get. So you're going to have a critical mass you need to reach on a given country, or even in the continent, in Europe, in order to make standardization an effective tool, because you will need an ecosystem able to evaluate and to keep the memory of the evaluation. You have a standard, you have a certificate, you need to have a way where you keep that record of the certificate, and you need to make that certificate known to the customers, to the industry players, in order to have an acknowledgement mechanism that it is being effective.
Yeah, Sid?
I would say the most important thing here is realistic timelines. And case in point, I think, is the Cyber Resilience Act, where harmonized standards are so important that I think it's good to be mentioned as well. So for those unfamiliar with the Cyber Resilience Act, it introduces cybersecurity requirements for product to be placed on the EU market. And the harmonized standards are the easiest way to show that you comply with these requirements. For some product categories, it even makes the difference between self-assessment and having to go through a third-party conformity assessment with your product, which can cost up to 40,000 euros per product. That is if the notified bodies have the capacity to process all the requests that are coming their way. So that is, one example where harmonized standards are so important to be available in a timely manner that I think it's very important to look at, how can we speed up this process? And then there are a couple of things, for instance, lessons that can be learned from the standardization work that has been done under the Red Delegated Act, which has, by the way, been a fantastic deal of work, indeed, by a center like JTC 13.
What was the key to that success? What did they do?
So there are two things that I think you could do to speed up this process, to get to realistic timelines, and that's one, we can have a discussion on the HAS assessment, so an external review of standards. I think that's creating some bottlenecks and uncertainty. And second of all is the use of existing international and European standards. So I think these are important things to mention. So bottom line, the realistic timelines are something that we have to work on.
Okay, that's some good. I'm also going to see in the audience, are there some people with suggestions how we can make it simpler and as simple as possible?
Michael Schneider, Continental. So I would be interested in learning, because we have a member of an industry association and members of politics, obviously. And I know there have been a couple of very prominent position papers that state the common interpretation of the fragmented digital landscape, how all those regulations interplay, in the hopes to get an assertive feedback. Are we right? Are we wrong? Could you please advise us, let's say, and that's how it's really supposed to work. And there might be a communication on the way, but I don't know if that has been already processed or widespread through the associations. But those interpretation suggestions from the industry, they are around. They came via Orgalin, via Digital Europe, Bitkom, you name it, and even from open source. And that might be an avenue to fast track also the standardization, because obviously you have to understand things before you can formalize them.
Yeah, it starts with understanding. Who likes to take this one?
Oh, yeah, just to say that I think this is obviously a discussion which is much broader than cybersecurity, and which is about the European standardization system as such, and that there again, it's actually the right time to give feedback and comments on how the system can be made speedier and more inclusive, because we will have the review of the standardization regulation happening next year, Q2 2026. So there again, of course, the Commission is looking into many different options and receiving feedback, listening to stakeholders to see how we can keep standardization simple.
Okay, someone even says just delay the CRA, then we have much more time to do this. That's much more better. That's a suggestion coming in.
I mean, that's. I think that is. I think that's something that would require quite a lot of political willpower to do that. I'm not sure that there is a lot of will to say that we should just delay this.
Even if you should want it, it's probably impossible to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a clear
I don't know
one.
if it's impossible. I think it's difficult to get the will to wish to do that, because again, we are in the situation we're in geopolitically.
Yeah.
Right, thank you. Arnaud Tadei again, so SG17 here at the ITU. So we took a very different approach. 3 years ago, we realized that we had a real problem with industry engagement. So after 2 failures in assemblies, we managed to change the game, created an action plan, created a fantastic workshop where we got 60 key players from the industry to help us. We came out with a complete list of actions. We realized that there are things we cannot do. The process of international standard bodies such as ISO, ITU, IEC are actually a benefit. Everybody agreed that this is a benefit. The problem to fast track is that we missed the recognition of the person before me who explained about associations and others. There is good work done outside by industry. The problem we have is that these alliances and consortia, they come together with a pre-consensus of what they want to do, and they have one thing to do. ISO, IEC, ITU, on the contrary, are exactly on the opposite situation. They are in no consensus a priori, and they have tons of things to do. So getting these two worlds together actually gives a big fast track because, as somebody pointed out, the industry knows what needs to be done, they prepare it correctly. It's up to the standard bodies above that to say, oh, we recognize something here, how can we get it on full exposure internationally? That's where the multi-stakeholder approach makes sense, and combining both worlds actually is quite of a big recognition. That was the key outcome of our work over there.
That's a very good practice. So it's not only speaking each other's language, it's also going a bit in this in the same pace. What I hear a little bit from here, also seeing here, there are a lot of good practices that we're working on.
Absolutely. I think one of the greatest ideas there is don't reinvent the wheel. I think there are good practices generally accepted on cybersecurity going around for the last 20 years or 25 years, already implemented in many companies, working very well, well recognized. So we need to do something. Just cross-reference, try to use the same terminology, try to map your controls with the controls of those good practices, and only add what is needed for your sector or for your business or whatever. So I think it's the main idea, to keep it, because this is like the law. You have to keep a good relationship among the different documents to make clear what is applicable, how to apply it, and to keep the number of documents at a minimum level. Because sometimes some experts get involved in a kind of ego trip to produce a document, that sometimes is not really needed. So I think we need to keep it simple, to keep it aligned with other standardization work, and try not to make easier for the companies to implement them.
François?
Yeah, one illustration is cybersecurity for artificial intelligence. When you observe the ongoing works on this area in artificial intelligence, then you have sometimes you have a partial reuse of what is already existing in the cybersecurity area. So the frameworks, the concepts from SC27 or JTC13 needs to be fully integrated in the works of artificial intelligence in order to have that robustness and resilience within artificial intelligence. And because of the contributors in that area are not necessarily coming from cybersecurity, they need a learning curve in order to absorb first that what's already existing and then adopt it in their works. And the challenge is this one, is being aware before working of what is already existing in order to have avoiding in reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
For sure.
What are some suggestions that we are seeing here to keep it simple?
Yes, so actually it was in line with what you just mentioned. So majority said that we should not reinvent the wheel. We should reuse the existing standards that we have and also avoid too many standards. In some cases, they also mentioned that we need to have a clear goal, do a reality check, and also not to lose the big picture.
Okay, well, those are some really good advices. Do we have some more questions also from the audience?
Alors.
We can go to the Q&A. Maybe there's some. Is this advice that you could really use, or is it? We all know this. We just have to do it.
We already use it.
We already use it.
We already use it. I mean, we try to produce standards there for a very practical way, and all the standardization organizations are composed by the industry.
Okay, so we shouldn't...
So the industry is there. So whether they are acting, in the national standardization body, are present in ETSI, are present in ISO. We treat all the time with the companies and with their particular interests. So that's why it's so important, the consensus among the industry. So we standardize it's already there. We are not inventing anything.
It's always good 9 minutes before lunch that we lift the maybe pessimistic mood and celebrate what we have, what we're doing. Kia?
No, but I think I agree. I think these are things that we're already thinking. I think the difficulty is when it hits reality, right? When you sit down and you actually have to make a standard, that is technologically difficult because, again, these are product standards, and how exactly do we do about this? We also have process standards. We have all of these different things. I think one of the things we, from a Danish perspective, have been is that when we do standards through the CRA, is that we focus more on horizontal standards, so we don't have one standard for one specific product that sort of differentiates, but try to have as clear-cut as possible.
Everybody likes everything super simple as long as it's tailored to my desires and needs. Yeah, that's always the case.
Can I make a quick comment on that?
Very quick one.
Because for us, as I said, reinventing the wheel or not reinventing the wheel is of utmost importance. And I just wanted to make a comment that the Joint Research Center and ENISA have done a study mapping existing standards to CRA requirements. That's exactly the kind of thing that we really like. That we would like to see more of, and I just wanted to say that we appreciate that sort of guidance.
Yeah, we have a question from the audience.
Yes, we have a question concerning stakeholder consultation and whether stakeholder consultation on the interplay between the CRA and AI Act.
So is the Commission planning a stakeholder consultation on the interplay between the CRA and what is the AA stand for again?
That is the AI
Artificial
Act.
Intelligence Act, yeah. So are you planning this, Camille?
So the answer to the second question is yes, definitely, because we are in the process of drafting guidance on the interplay between the CRA and a number of pieces of legislation, which would also include the AI Act. Even if we already have an interplay which is already envisaged in the legislation, actually I think in this case it could be a positive example to mention in the sense that we are already inbuilt in the legislation. We have this possibility to have a presumption of conformity. If you comply with the Cyber Resilience Act, with the CRA, for your AI system, that you would then get the presumption of conformity also with the cybersecurity requirements of the AI Act. So this is also some inbuilt mechanisms, possibilities that we have. So here that would also simplify things for manufacturers. But still, yes, guidance, we are developing this, especially in the context of the expert group on the CRA.
Okay, that sounds very good. Also, it sounds good that the complexity is becoming bigger, but we're also becoming better in managing complexity. That's a good one. Nushin.
Yes, I think you partly answered this question, but I will show it here. Will an organization be established to support coordination in the application and interpretation of the CRA, similar to Red CA that we have?
I really love the person who wrote this question explaining all the abbreviations. That's very good for inclusivity. Yeah. Who dares to answer this question?
So I can only say again that yes, the interplay between the CRA and the Radio Equipment Directive will also be part of this guidance document that we are planning. And I cannot answer regarding whether an organization is going to be established.
Yeah?
I mean, I can't answer whether there are any plans ahead of it. I can just say that in the legislative act itself, we haven't done this. We have given a number of tasks to ENISA that I'm sure they're very thrilled about in regards to this. But I don't think that's going to be in the detail of application interpretation. But we do have an expert group where member states are represented that do discuss this and help to figure out the best practices and how we do this and how we will implement it across each other.
Is more organizations the answer or the problem?
I don't think, I mean, we already have quite a big cyber ecosystem in Europe. I don't think we need to create more things. A lot of this, like the interpretation of the Cyber Resilience Act, is a commission responsibility to a large extent. And when it comes about application, again, we also at member state level have to coordinate this and to work together. So I think, I don't necessarily think that just creating an organization will mean that this will be done more succinctly, but also how can we utilize what we already have to actually get the job done.
Yeah, that triggered a reaction in the audience.
This is Wurdenthal again. I'm also working in CENELEC as a chair for the CRA on semiconductors. My point is what was mentioned before on the different topics. So to simplify this and involve, I think exactly what Sid said, there is a mapping report existing. And what is new to this is that also outside of the standardization organization, we have also industry associations which are working on this since many, many years, good practices. And this is my request also to the Commission to involve also this information and use it to get compliance. This will simplify also the work of existing work already best practices.
Camille?
Yes, so could you perhaps elaborate a little bit on the work done by these external stakeholders and how you envisage this interaction with the standardization work, please?
Yeah, so for example, we involved there directly organizations like Eurosmart as an example. And I said in this mapping, which ENISA did, they're already referring to, for example, protection profiles to get into some details, that you can reuse then to be compliant if the Commission also accepts this and put this into an implementing act or delegated act. So to simplify work, which is existing, to reuse this and then to be compliant.
So yeah, this is indeed an interesting option, and also as somebody personally involved both in certification and CRA, of course, we are looking into this. So just also for the big picture, because we were told that we need to be a bit more high level. Indeed, in the Cyber Resilience Act, you have this possibility for the Commission to activate a delegated act that will establish that compliance going through a European Cybersecurity Certification Scheme. So established under the Cybersecurity Act, would also grant presumption conformity with the CRA requirements. So that's also an interplay that is there inbuilt in the legislation to make things simpler. And we have not activated this empowerment yet, but we are looking into it, definitely. We have to ensure that there is an alignment between the schemes and the CRA. But no, it's and also, as you know, there was this ENISA study published recently on this interplay between the EUCC, more specifically the EUCC scheme and the CRA. So this is yeah, something that we're also envisaging. Also, when it comes to the possibility to reference protection profiles.
Okay, I strongly recommend you. Oh, I see you happily nodding. So, but perhaps you could meet more over lunch to discuss this. Camille, the Commission is not always in an easy position here because, on the one hand, citizens, the politicians demand a lot of make Europe strong again from you. On the other hand, the industry, rightly so, says involve us, coordinate us, keep it simple for us, keep oversight. Let's reverse the role for 1 second before we go to lunch. What would you demand from the stakeholders in the room? What do you want from them, or what do you want them to stop doing or do different, if you could choose for a moment?
Actually, I think this brings us back a little bit to the answer I gave to a previous question. I really see two things. First, we would really welcome feedback as part, well, in the view of the upcoming digital package that will come this year, and which will include also some simplification measures. So there, please be ready, already think about some ideas, some comments that you would like to make, because there will be a public consultation for sure. Then there is also, and I think that's the case for many of you, including the member states, the possibility to contribute to the implementation via the expert groups. So we have, I would also, for instance, for the CRA, we have the CRA expert group, which has quite a broad representation, actually. So I would also really encourage here the stakeholders to get actively involved, because it's really going to be concrete work being there, talking about guidance documents, all these kind of things. So for the CRA. So this is also where we would appreciate a lot an active involvement.
Okay, there's probably a lot coming to you.
And my second point, just to wrap up, and here it's also a word of appreciation and acknowledgement. I already want to thank many of you for being so involved in the standardization work for the CRA. I think it's wonderful to see such a high level of engagement and to see that already a lot has been done. So already thank you to all of you for this. And for those of you who are not active yet in the standardization bodies, I would really encourage you, invite you to get involved.
Get involved, that's always the best part to be. To wrap this up, we're going to ask you in the audience and also at home, if you have listened to the discussion, are you more or less optimistic, so on a scale from -5 to +5, that all this legislation can be aligned, that we can make standards for all of them, that we can make those standards aligned, that we can do so while coordinating the ecosystem in Europe properly, and that we can also do this within the given deadlines? For a first day of spring where it's 20 degrees and sunny outside, these are not very encouraging numbers so far, because after discussion, people are less. So then let's wrap up this discussion and go to lunch, because else the numbers go down. Here we have the motto of ETSI, keep calm and standardize. Before we go to lunch, from each of you, what would you suggest to all of us in this ecosystem to stay alive, deal and survive, but also happily join in this the situation where we're in, where there's so much work and so much important work to be done? What kind of advice would you give us, François?
Yeah, leverage at maximum on standards and reuse your evidence as much as you can.
Wonderful. Kia?
I think get involved, know that there is an openness to collaborating across different sectors between the industry and the more governance side. So just don't be so pessimistic about it. We're all trying to do it as best as we can, and I think there is an openness, especially when it comes to the simplification agenda, that there hasn't been previously. So take full advantage of it.
Camille?
Yes, so beside what I just mentioned previously, remember that we are perhaps at the moment in the moment of highest uncertainty, because we are currently implementing a lot of pieces of legislation, and we are aware that this is also an effort, but that this is perhaps the highest uncertainty point, and that it's going to get better.
Yeah. Paloma?
Thinks that this could be worse. So take it as a possibility. Take it as a challenge, as a possibility. I think it's a good moment to review your companies and to review your processes and to try to align with us with a global cybersecurity. Otherwise, no digital ecosystem is going to survive.
Sid?
I think standardization and simplification go hand in hand, starting with indeed the reuse of existing standards, but also the timely availability of harmonized standards. So I would say, let's get to work together.
Well, it's wonderful. We can't make it easier than it is, and the world is developing fast. The requirements from citizens, rightly so, and businesses go fast. But it's good to hear that standards are not a problem, but a solution. Standards are not the end point, but more and more the beginning, and that more and more we learned to deal with complexity, and so it will be fun. And the good thing is, while you were giving your final advices, I saw the numbers go up slightly more into the positive direction. If you would speak for 15 more minutes, it probably will all be really high numbers. But for now, you get a big round of applause for this panel. And we are going to take a lunch break. After lunch, we're going to deep dive much more in what should we be doing if we take all this into account and look into the future. Enjoy your lunch.